Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, where you're going to grow into the man you want to be. Your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee it. The father of personal development, Jim Rohn, said it best. You are the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. And so I've created a mastermind community called the Lion's Den around this idea that if you are surrounded by high-performing people and you have consistent education and training, then you will succeed in life and as a man. Check out kfmlion.com to learn how the Lion's Den can take your life, relationships, and business to the next level. Again, that's kfmlion.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Jake Ducey. He's a motivational speaker, youth role model, and the millennial inspirational author of Into the Wind, and just launched his second book, The Purpose Principles. And he's also a former TEDx speaker. So, all right, I'm really excited to have you here. Let's dive in. How you doing today, Jake?
Let's do it, man. I'm doing wonderful.
All right, Jake. So we start off every show with a favorite success quote of the guest or a saying that they've lived by. So go ahead, let's kickstart the show. What do you got for us? And then go ahead and explain why you chose that.
Yeah, well, I'd say most of us are gambling on the biggest risk of all, and that's the bet that one day we can buy the freedom to do what we want later in life. And as a result for that, the second one I'd throw in is write it down, make it happen. So I think they tie in well together.
Yeah, they certainly do. And what does that first quote really mean to you? Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, man, I think that recently the Gallup Poll did a study, and Forbes and Fortune both did big write-ups on it for their October editions. And it was a poll where they polled thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans that are working. 76% of them came back and said they're actively disengaged from their work, and almost a third of them said they hate their job. That's crazy. We're working, we're spending all of our lives doing these things that we don't really want to be doing. And I think it's nuts to be, living these boring, mundane realities and ways that we're progressing just so we could think we're going to eventually get security by making a certain amount of money doing something. We're gambling that later in life we'll find freedom if for now we don't live the way we want.
Yeah, this is actually really a core topic, at Knowledge for Men, which is the idea of finding your purpose and living it as a means to reaching freedom. So, you're on track, you're on target with this topic here. So, I'm really curious to how you got started with all this. Jake, you're a young guy and you're publishing books with Penguin, probably one of the largest, publishing companies there is. So, share with us your story, Jake.
Yeah, man. So here I am. I'm 19 years old. You listening to this may be a bit older, but I bet you can relate to sitting in some place where you don't want to be, doing some things you don't think you should be doing, and dying to know what matters in your life. Here I am, I'm 19. I was a first team All San Diego basketball player, one of the top recruits out of high school, led San Diego in three-point shooting. We were one of the top teams in state. I went to school to play basketball, tore something in my knee beforehand, so I turned down a couple of D2 scholarships and decided to go D3 because the coach told me I was going to have more time to be a college person, which is a total lie. And so we get up there a little bit early. It's just all the mundane stuff. And I'm sitting in class and I'm wondering, why the heck am I doing this? And I'm wondering, what's the point in this? I'm studying business. The only reason I'm studying business is because everyone says we should study business. The supposed to syndrome, supposed to do this. And I'm like, excuse me, professor, why can't we audit the Federal Reserve? If they're printing our money and we're in this huge debt, why can't we audit them? Because the Federal Reserve is as federal as FedEx. My teacher tells me basically to shut up. And we need to study this on the textbook. So, man, I was just so disenfranchised. I was partying really hard. And, no matter our age, we all have kind of our escapisms. Mine were partying and women. And one day somebody gave me Jack Canfield, the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul's book, The Success Principles. I thought it was stupid, and I eventually decided to read it. And that changed my life to see that there's these common threads between the most successful, influential, and powerful people in the world. They all took a risk to do what they wanted to do with their lives, even if it didn't seem logical. They all had clear goals. They all wrote it down and made it happen. They had a vision for their lives rather than being a vision of somebody else's. This was hard, learning this, doing something I didn't want to do. And eventually, after the third semester, I found the courage to take the few $1,000s I had, quit basketball, and quit school. And I backpacked around the world. I backpacked around the world, basically vagabonding it. Went to a bunch of third world countries, had a near-death experience falling off a cliff, and realized there was nothing in the world I was looking for. It was all inside myself.
So, which countries did you go to, and did you have a plan? It sounds like you just dropped out of college.
Yeah, well, the school was calling me to ask for them to pay me because they said I didn't properly drop out, but I thought that was stupid. So they didn't think I dropped out right, but I definitely did.
Yeah, you got to be formal about that.
Yeah. So I didn't have a plan when I traveled. I never read any maps. I never read Lonely Planet. I never knew where I was going to go. It was really just about seeing what experiences life would bring me and how I would respond to them. I think that especially once we are entering the phase of our life where we need to start working, we're in such a certainty phase, such a routine phase, that uncertainty is not only often uncomfortable and scary, but it's also a total unknown. We never experience it. I myself never experienced it. So my trip was about uncertainty. I started in Guatemala. And after that, I wanted to go to Indonesia. In Guatemala, it was crazy to see all these kids that literally wore the same clothes every day. They didn't even have a cent, yet they woke up excited about every day. And that really hit home. And that made me see, like, wow, maybe life is about like something within ourselves. And that bumped me. I decided to get to Australia because I thought it'd be a good Western touching ground before I went into Asia. So Australia, I slept on the beach, hitchhiked, backpacked, met people from 30, 40 countries, went into Indonesia, lost my wallet with all my bank cards in them. You know, like imagine here you are, you're venturing outside of your realm of comfort and you lose all your Western conveniences.
And so, did you lose your passport and all your money?
All I had was my passport and money for the next day and a half or so. And that was really cool because I met locals that took me into the projects where they live. I traveled around with them. These are the guys who saved me a couple weeks later when I fell. And so it was just an incredible experience to see how all these other people around the world are living what matters to them. They're not living in order to accumulate things or climb a certain ladder of success. And it was really beautiful.
Yeah, and from your experience of adventure and new cultures, what were some of your biggest lessons you learned from your travels?
Yeah, I'd say three primary things. One, the ultimate lesson that I learned was you can try and go anywhere you want in the world. You can try and travel your heart out or move to a new city, but ultimately it's about looking within ourselves, and we find that thing within ourselves, and we find that life is about finding that gift within ourselves and sharing it with the world. And that was the main thing I really realized. And two, I realized there was a difference between learning it and living it. And that's the title of my TED Talk. Learning it is like knowing I should be taking this step in my life, or like, I know I really should start that business, or I know I should really go travel. I know I should do it, but not doing it. And living it is taking the step, taking the risk, even when we're scared out of our mind. Three, what happened to me is that I realized I ended with 14 days silent meditation after I fell, and I decided I didn't want to travel anymore. And I realized like how much of our thoughts are illusions, and how much of our fears aren't real, and how much of our anxieties are just this voice talking in our head. And when we can recognize that, when I was able to recognize that, that's what allowed me to, at 19, hit a book that made the top 300 on Amazon, and now be the youngest published inspirational author with Penguin Random House for my new book.
Wow, all three really good lessons. Now, the first one, stood out to me, looking within yourself. Are you suggesting that guys you don't need to travel the world, you don't need to read all the books, attend all the seminars, but the answers are really just within you?
That's what I believe. That's what I found true for myself. Everyone has their own path, but I think that not only did I find that for myself, but many of the greatest influencers of the world, Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in the world and king of the Roman Empire, says that, so far as Ralph Waldo Emerson, to many of the greatest influencers today. And I believe that power is first found within ourselves. And so I believe the way to recognize that is really asking ourselves questions like, who am I and what am I here for? But I believe the problem is that we're often looking into the exterior world for the answers to our life. And that goes back to my original quote about we're gambling on the biggest risk of all, and that's the bet that we can buy the freedom to do what we want later in life. And we have all these people around America especially that are so unhappy, especially Western worlds. We're at the highest rate of psychotropic drugs prescriptions ever, like antidepressants and things like that. I believe that's because we're always looking into the world for what we should do. People say, do this, try that. Here's the 5 subjects you can major in. Here's where you're going to get your secure salary that's basically never going to increase for the next 20 years. And really, I don't think we can find what we're here for unless we look inside of ourselves, unless we trust our own feelings, unless we trust our own intuition.
I like that. And with the second lesson, learning it versus living it, I think the deeper question is really, why don't we live it when we know what we should do? Right? I think, like, for example, losing weight, common thing here, major industry right there. And we all know what the solution is. It's eat healthy, exercise more. Simply, that's it.
Yeah.
If you do those 2 things, you're going to lose some weight. And, it's like there's all these products out there, there's drugs out there, there's all kinds of different diets and fads. And, it's just like, we know what we need to do.
Yeah.
But we're just not doing it. And I think that really brings up that deeper question I talked about, just like, why don't we live it when we know what we should do?
Yeah, no, it's a funny question. My new book, The Purpose Principles, is really about this whole concept. And I believe that one of the main things I believe is that we think that fear, if we're scared, if we feel fear, then like that we have to get to a state of fearlessness in order to get there. And I believe it's really more so about just being courageous and taking action in spite of fear. And, I'm sure you learned that from Laird. I'm sure Laird told you he gets scared out of his mind when he's on 100-foot waves. And I think my book is really about sharing these failures and these stories of some of the world's most successful and influential people today and all the fears that they have. So I think that the reason we're stuck, that we're not living it often, is I think we think our fear is real. I think number 2 is we think that we need a certain amount of qualifications. Look, some of the world's most influential business people had no idea how to run a business. They just had a vision and they just knew they wanted to make a difference and they wanted to live a better life. And that reasoning propels us forward. Richard Branson's a beautiful example. The guy who started Vega Nutrition, which is now the biggest plant nutrition company in the world. He had never started a business. He didn't go to college. He didn't know how to run a business. His name is Brendan Brazier. And I've had the opportunity to get to know him. I believe that we think that we need qualifications or we need to be fearless. And I think another thing is when we have goals and when we do have visions, we think that the goal is actually the objective. And I believe that, as Henry David Thoreau said, the point of a goal is who you become in the process. The point of a goal is in the end result. And we get caught up in it being the end result. And when it doesn't happen or we reach a failure and we start to try and live it, but we end up getting stuck because we hit a wall and we don't realize that it's about who we become. Like, that's really what is of value. And I think that those 3 things are pretty significant that keep a lot of us from really living the life, moving confidently in the direction of our dreams, like Henry David Thoreau says.
So it's really about who you become and the lessons you learn on that journey and not necessarily the end goal.
Yeah, I really believe that, and I think that many of the world's biggest success, almost all of them, are telling us these exact things. So I think that that can scare us. I think hard work can scare us. Like Marcus Aurelius says something like, "Just because you find the work too hard to do, don't leap to the conclusion that it's humanely impossible. But like, if the work can and should be done by someone, then consider yourself capable of doing it." And so I think when we recognize those things, then we can really take that next step and recognizing who we are and the power we have within ourselves.
If it can and should be done by someone, then consider yourself capable of doing it. Wow. I really like that. And that really brings us to your book now, The Purpose Principles. So walk us through what it's about and how it came to be. And I know you interviewed a handful of heavy influencers, to get this book going.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. I just turned 23, so it's pretty crazy to have my second book out with Penguin Random House. And the book's The Purpose Principles, How to Draw More Meaning into Your Life. The foreword's by Jack Canfield, the creator of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and the other endorsement on the cover is Sean Gray, who did Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus books. And the book, I think that often when we see and hear of influential, successful people that are living their dreams or contributing to the world in a positive way, we think, well, that's just them. Like, they didn't go through these huge struggles to get there. And so I broke the book down into 15 principles that I believe and found that some of the world's biggest success and difference makers have in common. So I share a gazillion stories from people, and it's people from today. I read like Think and Grow Rich and the Success Principles, and what I found was none of these books share people today. They're often about, like, they're great books, but they're often about dead people.
Like Andrew Carnegie.
Yeah, they're dead people. So I share like
We can't relate
yeah,
sometimes.
so I share like stories from Jay-Z to Brad Pitt to Bob Marley to Jack Canfield and all these people in between. So that's just a little gist about the book. And, really my goal with it is I want people to see themselves in the same light as the world's biggest successes, as the world's biggest difference makers. And I believe that that's what this book can show when we hear these unfamiliar stories of people.
And so did you actually meet some of these guys that you wrote the book about?
Yeah, a lot of them. Some of them was through, tremendous research, but I met with a lot of them. Yeah, and some of the coolest stories that I found, like Brad Pitt is someone I didn't meet with, and I'm sharing him because, it's such a mainstream example, and one of the principles is about taking risks. We hear of Brad Pitt and like this money this guy makes, and apparently, his incredible life. Who knows, how he feels about it. On the outside, the media makes it appear like it's so tremendous. But this guy was set up to be a journalist. He was in his senior year at University of Missouri, had a secure job set up to be a journalist at a news place out there. And he was just about to graduate, a few weeks from graduation to walk. But he never wanted to do it. Like many of us, people listening, and like myself, and perhaps you right now, or at another point in your life previously, we feel this like, man, this is cool, but this could work out, be secure, but it isn't what I want to do. Brad Pitt decides 2 weeks before he's graduating, he has a couple $100 and an old beat up car. He just tells his mom, hey mom, I'm going to Hollywood and I'm going to pursue my dreams of being an actor. By the time he gets there, he is so poor, so broke. The only thing he can afford is McDonald's. He has no money. And he decides to take the El Pollo Loco mascot job in order to pay for acting school. That's where this guy started from. That's the risk, the uncomfortability that he came from. So I highlight all these cool stories like that because I think that it can allow us to really step into living it.
Yeah, and for all the listeners, go ahead and right now just Google El Pollo Loco mascot. It's like a big yellow chicken. It's a big bird looking costume. So, all right, so you're gathering these stories of guys that we really don't know about. We don't see the struggle. We didn't see the grind. We just see them winning awards with beautiful women, etc., making their millions. And what you're doing is you're showing the world that these successful figures were once just regular people.
Yeah, they are, and they still are just regular people. Our media just, of course, loves to exacerbate the celebrity thing, but they're just normal people. They all have their struggles. They all have their fears. And like you found with Laird Hamilton, who's surfed the largest waves ever and is a surf legend, dude still gets scared on waves. And I think when we can recognize that and see ourselves in these stories, that it can give us the know-how in order to take a step in spite of fear, to step into uncertainty, to do that thing we've always wanted to do, or just try and uncover more of who we are and what we may be here for.
Yeah, and man, there's this quote that I just read. It's by this Indian philosopher. His name's Osho, and it goes like this. It's like, in the beginning, there's not much difference between the coward and the courageous person. The only difference is the coward listens to his fears and follows them, and the courageous person puts them aside and goes ahead. The
Mm.
courageous person goes into the unknown in spite of all the fears. And this is really about just like understanding that the fear is always there for everyone, but you learn to accept it and walk through it anyways.
Yeah, I totally believe that. I think that's really what it means to be a man, is to not be fearless, but to take action in spite of fear. And I think those are the common threads that we see time and time again. From the Beatles were originally denied by Decca Recording Studios, who said they had no, chance in show business. There's all these common threads between the potential of failure, and I think recognizing that being a man is really doing the work, even if it seems too hard or it seems too scary. When you don't want to do it, but doing it anyways, that's conquering ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that's at the core of a man's spirit, and equally, finding meaning in life, which I know is a topic within your book. So can you elaborate on that topic, that finding more meaning in life?
Yeah, I believe that it's pretty hard for a life to have meaning unless it's a life of our own design, a life of our own choosing, a life of our own terms. And so I think really simply we get more meaning out of life just by the little things of choosing the life how we want to live. To me, it goes so far as like being an instrument for some greater purpose, whether that's something so simple as feeding the homeless or creating a business that, does good in the world, or even just like a 1v1 model like Tom's that gives back, choose in the process. To me, we draw more meaning in our life, like I was saying, plain and simple, by living the life that we want to live and inspiring others, helping others. It's really that simple to me. And how could the life not be meaningful if we wake up every day and we're like, this is the thing I want to do. That's what matters. I think that's where meaning comes from.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like the whole idea of following your purpose and passion is about building a business. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying when we kind of hear that, we think like, "Oh, I'm going to build this business and change the world." But to me, it sounds like what you're talking about is really just finding more meaning in your life with what you're currently doing.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think that all goes back to our media. We live in this society where big things are idolized and fantasized about. But like, did Gandhi and Mother Teresa just like went outside and helped people? Like they didn't have they didn't go like create a 70-page business plan or something like that. They just like went and helped people. Like Martin Luther King just like went and like helped people, and then like people were inspired by it and it turned into something. I think our destiny finds us. And I think more meaning in life just comes by like little things. Like it always makes me feel so good. My day always feels so complete when I stop to the person, the cashier at the store, and I say, "How was your day going?" And I look them right in the eye and they say to me, "Thank you for asking. No one's asked me that today. I haven't been feeling that well. And like, I really don't want to be here because I'm kind of sick. But you just made my day better." Like, what could bring more meaning than to help someone's day? I think those little things are like so overlooked, but they're so important to feeling good about ourselves, which I think is really what we're all after, right?
Yes, I mean, as you're saying that, yesterday I was at CVS, it's a pharmacy, and this checker, the cashier, was helping all the guys in front, all the customers, and he was just so cheerful and happy, and he was like saying, "Happy holidays, like Happy New Year's to everyone," and no one was like looking him in the eye. They wouldn't even say anything back to him. And it happened to 3 customers in front of me. They just grabbed their bag and left. And he was like, and I just felt like, why would you not? Why would you ignore this person who's like trying his best? You know, he's trying to make the best out of his situation. And so when I got up there, I was just like, hey, how are you doing? Like, and it just lit him up to be able to have a conversation, like a real conversation with someone. You know, even if it was just for 30 seconds, it's still something. And it was just crazy for me to see like 3 people not acknowledge this person.
Isn't that nuts, man? It's like you can write a million books, but if you're a dick to people, like your life doesn't have any meaning. Like if you forget people in the process to climb the ladder of success, like those are the people that like get all this money and then we find out like they regret they never lived a happier life. I have a really cool story I share in my book about Tom Shadyac. Tom Shadyac, really famous director, directed Ace Ventura, all these really big movies. And I got to go with Tom last year around Christmas to this elementary school in Compton, California. Super, for those that don't know, it's an extremely impoverished, largely minority community in Los Angeles. And we went and delivered 250 bicycles to the kids that Tom bought. And Tom gave a speech to the kids. And he said, I want you to know that I didn't buy you this bike so you could have a present. I didn't buy you this bike so that you could ride around and like have this thing for a couple years. I bought you this bike because I want you to know that we care about you. I want you to know that you matter. And I think that's like one of the most beautiful things that can bring our lives meaning, is to really take the time to just, it sounds cliche, but just like be a good person is like, that's how your life will feel good.
Yes, and that brings us back to the lesson earlier on learning it versus living it. And it just hurts me to see someone who's maybe like on stage, or they've written a book, or they have this really cool movement, they have a podcast, whatever it is, and you get the opportunity to meet this person at live, and they're just not that person in real life. Like,
yeah, man.
What they do is not who they are, and they're not congruent.
Yeah, it's so, of course, there's a difference between making mistakes and just being a dick. And at 23, it's pretty unique with my book. So it's allowed me to meet a lot of people I thought were my heroes. And the reason I had Jack write the foreword to my book is because he's one of the only people that didn't disappoint me when I met him. And I think that like we don't know until we experience it, but you can have the money. It's the same theme. But if you're like not in congruence, like you said, with like who you're trying to appear to be, like what's the point?
Yeah, then I think you're after something else, and you have some ulterior motives, and you're using your content as a means to generate something for yourself. That's what I feel about that. But now, Jake, I have a question that I think is going to challenge you a little bit. And so here's a scenario for you. Let's say, there's a guy who's thinking about taking on some sort of large risk, like quitting their job, but it's just not feasible because they're married with children and maybe they have financial obligations. So I feel like this is a topic that's going to come your way because you're a younger guy and because you don't have a family with those kind of obligations.
Yeah, man, I think it's such a cool topic. And the one thing I always want to be clear is I definitely never want it to come across like my message is not quit your job. My message is, where can you find more meaning in your life? And I think first things first, like I'm really blessed to not have a bunch of ties, whether it's, with a family or whatever. And second, I think is like, man, there's always a couple hours a week where we can start beating on our craft, even if we're working, even if it's one day a week, we always have to start somewhere. I think those are really beautiful things. And I think that just because my message isn't quit your job. You may never need to quit your job to bring more meaning in your life. I think it goes back to those little things about the way we treat people. Also, I think about developing goals. I think goals are really important. And that's why when my first quote was write it down, make it happen. You don't need to quit your job and change your entire life in order to add more meaning or add some more, spice to your life. And so I like the question, what would have to happen 1 year from now for me to look back and say it was my most successful and fulfilling year yet?
Ooh, great question because we're going into 2015 right now.
Yeah, and to answer that question, you don't need to change your whole life and divorce your wife and go cut your kids off and never talk to them again and leave your job. You don't need to go travel around the world to ask yourself what would have to happen 1 year from now for me to look back and say it was my most successful and fulfilling year yet. Maybe it's eventually to start your own business. That may be it. It may never be, but we can always work towards it. I think maybe it's losing 20 pounds or gaining 20 pounds of muscle or eating healthier or creating more financial freedom. And I think starting to ask ourselves these questions and working towards those things and remembering the point of a goal or a business and all these things is who we can become in the process. And so I think looking at those things and the ways that if you're not going to change the big parts of your life about where you're working or who you're interacting with, if that's just a part of who you are, totally love and respect that. But where else can you branch out in little areas of life, or getting to the gym more often or meditating more often or starting to develop whatever it is from your own art, your own gift in your extra time?
Yeah, so it's not about the extreme moves, it's about the little things that can really create major shifts in your life.
Yeah, I think my whole message, I traveled around the world and I found
And that was your path.
yeah, but I found I wasn't looking for something out in the world. And I think the other thing is there's 365 days in a year, not one. A year isn't one day. And I think that okay, so what are the little things that we can do? Jack calls it the rule of five. What are 5 things that you can start doing every day to, maybe create the life more and more that you want to live in? That doesn't mean that you burn your house down. But what are 3 to 5 things you can start doing every single day? Maybe it's writing a page every day to work towards eventually putting a book together. Maybe it's, telling someone you love them every day, or journaling or meditating or running for 2 hours, or, on the weekends going to another city, all those little things.
Yeah, they really add up. And now, Jake, let's enter the knowledge round. So I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions here. So are you ready for the knowledge round?
I'm ready for the knowledge round.
Do you feel stuck, alone, or like you're not getting the type of results you think you deserve? You put in all the hard work in your life, relationships, and business, but things just aren't getting any better? I've been there. That's how I started. That's where I was. I kept trying and trying to improve my life, but nothing just seemed to give. I started to think that personal development was a joke. I felt like every month I was in the same place I was the previous month. But then I found something that just worked. I grew, my business grew, my relationships flourished, and everything around me just started to click. People started respecting me more, and I finally felt like I was becoming the man I wanted to be. I created a program to help guys get the same results in their life. Check out kfmline.com to learn how the Lion's Den can radically transform your life. Again, that's kfmline.com. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. All right, and Jake, first question here. What advice would you give to someone who's feeling kind of lost or unsure of their purpose or what they should do with their life?
I'd just repeat my question. I think asking ourselves, what would have to happen 1 year from now for you to look back and say it was your most successful and fulfilling year yet? And write down at least 3 to 5 things. What would have to happen 1 year from now for you to look back and say it was your most successful and fulfilling year yet? And you can't say, I don't know. You can't say that. You have to put something down on paper. 3 to 5 things that would have to happen 1 year from now. And you cannot say, I don't know.
And Jake, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
I thought you needed qualifications in order to write books. And qualifications are, you need will. You need will, not qualifications.
Right. I wanted to start a podcast over a year ago, and I just decided to do it. I didn't own a mic, didn't know how to record audio, didn't know how to get it on iTunes, didn't know any of that, didn't know how to get guests, just wanted to do it and made it happen. And, a million downloads later, I'm here talking to you, and it's just awesome. All right, right, and next question here. This will be great because you've been around so many influencers. But can you name a mentor who's helped you, who's had a large impact on your life and on your journey? And if so, was there ever a specific moment that was really impactful for you?
Yeah, Jack Canfield. He sold 700 million copies. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for having 8 books on the New York Times bestseller list at one time. He's influenced my life in so many ways. I wouldn't even have written my new book, The Purpose Principles, That's Out of Penguin, if I hadn't been inspired by Jack. And he breaks everything down so simple. I'm like, Jack, like, what's the one thing that anyone needs to do to succeed in life? And I'm thinking he's going to give me like a 5-minute answer. He just says, write it down, make it happen. I'm like, yeah, so keep talking. He's like, no, that's it. Just like, write something down, start a goal somewhere, and go do it. And then once you get there, you'll become a better person and you'll learn more, and then write something else down and make it happen again. And it's really simple. We had a really cool story of how we met, which is, it's a couple minute story. So I don't know if this is rapid.
No, share the story. I want to hear this. How did you meet Jack Canfield, and how did he become your mentor? I think this is really applies to what you talked about earlier with living it versus learning it, and you're truly living what you preach, which is just great. So go ahead and share the story.
Yeah, that's an awesome question. It's one of my favorite stories. So I'm 19 years old, and this is before I left to travel. Jack says in his books to write it down, make it happen. Just like people that may be listening, you're hearing me saying this. Jack says write your 101 goals down, which I have 101 goals written down, and it always gets bigger. I add more. So I'm like, maybe like you listening, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds great, but you may not write them down. Or, I have them in my head. I'm just like, okay, whatever. I don't know if I believe this guy, but I'll write them on a piece of paper. Number 9, become mentored by and endorsed by and friends with, endorsed by Jack Canfield. I have no idea how this is going to happen. I go on my journey, I write my book, which my first book was self-published. I think I said I couldn't get a publisher. And 2 months before it's coming out, I got a phone call from a friend. She says, here you are, you just took this step to create something you wanted to create. You're so excited. And your friend calls, she says, hey, Jack Canfield's emceeing this event in LA, and it's in like a day. And so you should go online, buy a ticket for it, and come and try and meet him. I'm like, okay, cool, yeah. So I go online, and I'm like so excited. I purchased this ticket, and it's one of those events where you place the order for your food online. So I place the order for my food when I buy my ticket, and Jack's emceeing this big event. I drive the 2.5 or whatever hours to get there. Only thing in my car is the book with signed to Jack Canfield. I show up at this event. I'm sorely underdressed, and it's in the ballroom of this really nice hotel. Jack's emceeing it. I walk in there. There's 600 or so people there. And the way they set it up was you had an assigned table. There's about 6 people at each table. I'm on the top floor. So like here I am, I'm like, I'm going to meet him. It's going to be so cool. I'm on the top floor. Jack's, of course, front and center. And so everyone wants to meet this guy. So there's lines to take pictures with him. But I'm not going to go over and be like, hey, Jack, can I have your picture? Like, I wanted to meet him. My goal was not, number 9 on my list was not get a picture with Jack Canfield. So I'm just waiting. I'm like trying to ignore every voice that's like, go now, go now, go now, every 2 minutes. So imagine, here you are, you're sitting at the top, and finally, after a while, Jack's like, yeah, I'm gonna go take a seat. We're gonna eat dinner in the next hour or so. Somebody else comes onto the stage and starts chatting, and I'm like, I'm going for it. So I just like rush down the stairs, and I go down towards his table. He goes straight to his seat. Ironically, at that time, no one comes over to talk to him, and I walk over. I say, hi, Jack, my name's Jake Ducey. I'm 19 years old. I wrote this book, and you inspired it. He looks at me, and he says, how did I inspire it? I said, and I start quoting him. In your book, you say, in the success principles, you say SW, 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 SW. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone's waiting. Some will say no. Some will say yes. So what? Someone is waiting for you. And you say, when someone says no, you say next. When they say no, you say next. And he looks at me. He just has this huge smile on his face. And he says, you should meet my wife. He taps his wife on the shoulder. Turns out his wife and my mom went to high school together. There's all these weird synchronicities that make the conversation carry on. And we're chatting for a few minutes. And I notice the waiter comes by to put the food on the table. So I'm like trying to wrap up the conversation. I don't want to be annoying. And just before I'm about to wrap it up, Jack turns to me and he says, are you going to eat that? And I'm like, what? I was so excited that I didn't even notice that the person to his left just before dinner. There's 600 people there. There's no empty seats anywhere. How on earth does it happen that the person to his left leaves early and there's no other empty seats? So I sit down. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I sit down and I eat dinner with them, and I spend the rest of the night at their table and chatting with him and chatting with his wife. And turns out I give them my book. His wife was inspired to write a book. We developed a friendship, that grew into him teaching me a lot and getting to spend a lot of time with him, and eventually turning into that conversation where he told me to write it down, make it happen. He wrote the foreword to my new book, The Purpose Principles. That's his book is Success Principles. And so that's how it happened. I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And I believe that it happened in part because I think when you write your goals down, look, like psychologists tell us, like almost 95% of our life is governed by our subconscious mind. And I believe that when you write your goals down, they imprint into your subconscious mind. And so it's like, how else would I finally get the urge to walk to the table at the time when the waiter is behind the scenes putting Jack's specific table's order together? How does that timing set up to where while I'm wrapping up the conversation, the waiter's putting the food down? How does it happen that I didn't get the urge an hour ago when the person was still there? How did I get the urge when no one else is at the table? So that's how we met, and it's a real cool story, and Jack tells the story in the foreword of the book.
Yeah, wow, that's very impressive. I'm glad you shared that story. But my question for you now is, why do you think that he helped you? There's probably so many people that reach out to him. Why do you think he helped you?
I'd say a couple things. One, I didn't have a business model, man. This wasn't a business. I just thought I wanted to write books. Like, if I was going to die, I wanted to be a writer. And in this industry, as you probably know, there's a lot of people that have a great message, but their great message is because they think there's great profit in capturing on people wanting more from life. It's not. I didn't write books for that. Jack sensed that right away. His wife sensed that right away, and they let me into their lives, and I got to see how they look at the world. They sensed that. Number two was Jack. He's getting older. He wants to inspire a younger generation. His passion. He's always had a passion for though he works a lot with quote unquote older people and a lot of big corporations. He wants to inspire younger people. He believes he has a timeless message. He wants someone that will introduce him to a younger generation. And I mean, for whatever reason, he thinks I have the ability to do that. Three, I think he thinks that I'm really refreshing. He writes that in the foreword of the book. He said, I consider him a mentor. And Jack says, Jake considers me a mentor, a role I relish, but I also consider him an inspiration in my own life. And I think that's because he sees I'm not looking, he thinks I'm not looking, and I try not to do that, but he thinks I'm not looking at end results of what I'm going to attain. And I think that's refreshing to him to see a young person entering this scene where Jack's at the top of the scene. He sees a lot of these people that want things from him. Jack asked me why I inspired the book when we met, because people tell him he inspires them because they want to make money off of him. And instead, I just started quoting him. And I think he took all those things to heart and recognized that my intentions to learn from him weren't for the intention to use it for things that he didn't want his name to be used for.
Yeah, I think you're a living example of what you preach, and he saw that in you, and you really just are passionate about trying to help people find their purpose and find more meaning in life, and he probably felt that in you.
Yeah, I think that I feel so grateful and honored. I've had this opportunity. It's quite something to have his name on the cover of my book, and he introduced me to John Gray and a lot of these people. And I think it boils down to like whomever we want to meet and whomever we want into our lives. I think if we're real, people sense that. And I definitely have a lot of areas to, continue to improve as a person in my own life. But I find in my own life, like if someone wants to connect in with me and I can sense like if I feel someone's being real with me or not. And I'm sure other people have denied me because maybe they didn't think I was being real or whatever the case is. I think that, on a deeper level, we can sense like, what is this? Does this person have like some ulterior agenda or like,
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll move on from that. And just, thanks for sharing that story because in the middle of the knowledge on, but really to me, it's like, regular guy, small town guy just has his passion, following his purpose and then just writing it down and making it happen. And I think that's just so powerful for people to hear and for the audience to hear that as well. So now next question here, it's going to be challenging for you. So try not to think about it too much, just whatever comes to your mind and
Okay.
just share with what you got. So what are your 3 most influential books and why?
3 most influential books. I'm answering as quick as I can so I don't think about it. Number 1 for me, and of course there's so many more books I need to read. Number 1, Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson is that was the book. I've read that 10 or 15 times. And that's powerful. Like self-reliance, like that is awesome. That's how we draw more meaning into our life, I believe. And he's got this guy was incredible. The things he had to say. One quote, my favorite quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson: "Whoso be a man must also be a nonconformist." And to me, that really goes with the story we're sharing the whole way about finding the ways to like really be ourselves in a world that's constantly trying to make us something else. Number 2, I would say, is a book that's really changed my life in the last 6 months, and that's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the world at his time. And to hear how this guy looks at the world, like how this guy looks at little things to how to get up in the morning to so far as the purposes of life, like what is more, it's, in my opinion, it might be the greatest piece of literature, like one of the most valuable pieces of literature we could ever have. This guy was the most powerful man in the world, and we have like his journal about like his life. And so that's like so powerful for me. Just it's so sobering and refreshing. Number 3, I'd probably say Jack's book, The Success Principles. And the reason that was so inspiring is to see that, like, one, success isn't where you are, but like where you put your direction and focusing on where you want to go. You can be anywhere and create whatever success means to you in your life. And another reason that's really inspiring is because he gives so many practical things that I share in my new book and I apply in my own life, such as tools for productivity, the rule of 5, which I shared, 5 things every day to move you closer to your goals, whether it's to be healthy or whether it's to make $1 million or whether it's to have a, more cohesive family unit. 5 things you can do every day. And I think that's really powerful because when we can recognize that, there's 365 days in a year. If you did 5 things every day, that's like 1,000 things in a year that move you 1,000 inspired actions every day. Eventually you're going to get there, whatever it is, whether it's to run the mile faster or whether it's to like make $1 million and everything in between. So I think those 3 books are 3 books that I think have really set me up to get more out of my life.
All right, I like that. And the next question here is more of a scenario here for you. So imagine you had 60 seconds to run up to your 18-year-old self. Just imagine he's sitting at a park and you get 60 seconds to run up to him right now. He's 18 years old, your former self, to go talk to him and tell him exactly what he should do and also what he shouldn't do.
I say, hey dude, look, everyone wants you to be something other than who you are. The first thing is quit worrying about going out and partying. The second thing is that's never going to fulfill you. The second thing is quit worrying about other people's approval. The only approval that you need, your job is to like yourself, not for other people to like you. 3, I'd say quit chasing women. The right one's going to come to you when you least expect it. So I think those three things, like men, we spend a lot of our time chasing women. We spend a lot of our time, wanting to please other people, and we spend a lot of our time partying. And I think if we can really ask ourselves these things that matter, it would really create change. So I'd really tell myself that. And when you see things that are gonna make you feel excited, even if they scare you, consider doing them.
Yeah, really good. You're like, oh, I have so much to say right here.
Can I have a day with myself instead of 60 seconds?
Yeah, there'd be some fighting involved, I think. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, now we'll move out away from the knowledge. And so this is going to be the final question, the knowledge round. And so just imagine where you were when you were in college, upset about what your professor was telling you and you wanted to drop out, to traveling across the world, to getting your past, all your important documents like stolen and money, and to writing your first book and being mentored by Jack Canfield and having your upcoming book, The Purpose Principles, published now by Penguin, which is a major publisher. Just looking back, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
Yeah, I'd say I really like this quote by Pablo Picasso.
Pablo Escobar?
Yeah. No, he says, Picasso says, the purpose of life is to find your gift and share it with the world. And I think that's beautiful because for 2 reasons. It creates fulfillment because that means we're finding our gift, not the gift somebody else wants us to have. That's, we find meaning out of life, I believe, by living the life we want. And 2, if you find your gift and you share it with the world, you're going to help others. And I think that, what more could we ask for, those 2 things? And I believe that if we have a gift, eventually we're going to become good enough at it to get a fee doing it, so we can get paid well, we can be excited because it's our life that we've designed, and 3, we can inspire others doing it. So I really believe that finding our gift and sharing it with the world, I think is, when we remember those intentions, that's how people sense we're real. That's what really, that's how. My business model isn't I don't go look up how to make a business model to sell to make $1 million. My business model is how can I be real? And I think that when we remember those things, so much is possible, so much more than we can imagine. But Patanjali has this quote. He's the guy that invented yoga sutras, supposedly thousands of years ago. And he says, once you're inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary task, your mind transcends all limitations. You break all your bonds, and dormant forces and faculties, talents within yourself become active. And I believe that when we are, after those gifts within ourselves, those things are capable for each and every one of us.
Wow. Isn't that crazy that he said that thousands of years ago?
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, even you said meditations, Marcus Aurelius. It's these guys said these things thousands of years ago, which shows that people were questioning, their life's purpose and what they should do, the same way that we are still today. It just fascinates me.
Yeah, I know. That's why I think the book is so cool. And I think that's why it's I think that's why life is so cool, because it's really simple. Our mind wants it to be complex, but it looks like it's actually really simple.
Yeah. All right. And Jake, let's now go into what's 2015 going to look like for you? What crazy grand things what do you got planned there?
Yeah, man, I'm all in on this book. Comes out right now. Today's the 17th. It comes out January 2nd, 2015. And I've got a serious 2015 that I'm really grateful for lined up. A lot of my favorite podcasts I'm on, from Art of Charm, which I recorded in an hour, to yours, Entrepreneur on Fire. I'm on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie, one of the biggest radio shows in the world, on January 4th. I'm doing a humongous 60-city tour. I'll speak to over 600,000 people. Just to kick off the year, I get to go speak on MLK Day about Martin Luther King in Washington, D.C. And so, I'm just really excited and so grateful for all these opportunities and people like yourself that have really given me the opportunity to share what I want to share and have supported me with your platform. And so I'm just really excited to see I'm really proceeding on faith in these principles that we've been talking again and again and about, and really proceeding on faith that life will keep opening up. I'm going to tour Australia in the fall. So yeah, just a really big year to really step into the life that I want to build for myself, and hoping that it will inspire others to, create this better world that we're desperately in need of as a human civilization.
All right, guys, be sure to pick up The Purpose Principles by Jake Ducey. You can check it out at jakeducey.com, or you can go to Amazon and type in The Purpose Principles, and that will be out January 4th, 2015. So really excited to check out the book. And Jake, thanks again for being on the show and sharing your time, your stories. We've learned a ton. I've learned a ton, and I'm really excited to put this out.
I really appreciate it, man. Yeah, it was really cool talking to you. It's really fun to talk to another young person. And yeah, I really encourage everyone to go out on Amazon or, wherever, grab a copy of the book. And I hope, this movement allows us to all see ourselves in the same light as some of the world's biggest difference makers.
All right, guys, that's going to wrap up episode 120 with Jake Ducey. Guys, and stay tuned for the next episode. It's going to be with Dave Asprey from the Bulletproof Radio and the Bulletproof Executive, and the founder and creator of the infamous Bulletproof Coffee. So we're going to be telling you, he's going to be sharing with you how to have an amazing diet, how to feel amazing, how to have amazing energy. We're going to talk about supplements, nootropics. We're going to talk about how to order a coffee so that you get the best quality coffee wherever you go. We're going to talk about bulletproof coffee. And of course, we're going to talk about life and a little bit of business as well. So stay tuned for the next episode. I'll see you there.